What's up, everybody? I'm Jason, and this is my live stream vlog for Friday, April 9th, 2021. This is episode 15, and today I'm going to be talking briefly. I think this is going to be another short episode. I'm going to be talking briefly about reviews, product reviews, reviews of camera gear, that kind of thing. Uh, why I'm talking about this has to do with what I'm working on right now. So I am working on doing a review for Canon's RF 24 to 70 f2.8 lens, and I'm kind of struggling with it. In fact, I'm kind of struggling with my review that I'm doing for the R5, the whole series of things, and I've just kind of I've run into this roadblock of what I need to review or what needs to be reviewed or what I need to do, or I'm not I'm struggling with it. So in the case of the lens, in the case of the camera, it comes down to it's just, I know what I'm doing. It's just a matter of there's so much complexity that I'm getting overwhelmed by it. But in the case of the lens, the problem that I sort of fundamentally there's a couple problems I'm fundamentally dealing with. So one problem is the thing that I think everybody wants to see in a lens review, which is resolution testing. I don't do. And it's not that I don't think resolution testing is important. It a lot of it comes down simply to the fact that it's really expensive, and to do it effectively, to answer the question that I think everybody wants answered, but nobody's really quite asking, which is not how much resolution was the review that the from the lens that the lens guy that the reviewer, how good is his lens. The question everybody wants to know is how good is the lens going to be that I get, that I buy. And that's the naive kind of response or approach is that, well, that's the uh, you can look at a review, and if the reviewer says the lens is really sharp, then that's what it is. It's a really sharp lens. But the reality is that because lenses are manufactured products and they're built to tolerances, and it's much more complicated in the case of, say, a lens than, say, a camera sensor, which is a manufactured product as well, but CMOS fabrication is a completely different cup of tea to grinding lenses and uh, putting those lenses into an assembly, and that kind of whole shoot and match that is actually putting a lens together. You can't really necessarily know if the lens that you have as a reviewer, or that you're looking at from a reviewer, is a really good copy, a really bad copy, something in the middle somewhere, and then how much of a middle is there. And so, because I can really only test the lens I can afford, the gear I can afford to buy, and therefore I'm only testing the lenses that I own or that I'm buying. And I'm not buying 3 and 4 lenses unless a lens that I buy is obviously got a really obvious problem that I would decide to send it back because it's not behaving properly. I don't have anywhere near the resources to say, yes, this is what you should expect from this lens. And this kind of thing goes out to even if you started aggregating reviews from multiple reviewers. So you take my number, and you take the number that's published on what is it uh well, for example, DxO Mark, and you take the number that's published on some other site, and you've got 3 or 4 numbers, and you say, well, I've got 3 or 4 numbers here, uh, that tells me X. Except, well, one, you don't know how good our testing setups are or how consistent our testing setups are. which is another problem. You have to have a consistent testing setup. So I could very easily be rocking, uh, I shouldn't say rocking, I could very easily be running a shoddy test setup compared to what uh, somebody else is running, and I come up with numbers that are either better than or worse than what they should be because my test is flawed, essentially. And so you don't really get a effective number out of this is what I'm getting to. In fact, about the only resolution tests information that I really look at is the data that's published by Lens Rentals, because they have a consistent test setup. It's something that they've invested in as a core of their business to maintain and ensure the quality of the lenses that they're renting. And they can test a fleet of tens, 50, maybe 100 lenses, whatever they buy, because they test all the lenses they have. And that gives you a significantly relevant number. It's something that says, look at, for 100 lenses, which doesn't say for, for a lot of the lenses, like if you're talking about a 24 to 70 f2.8, they make, Canon and Nikon will make close to 1 million, if not more than 1 million of those lenses over the lifetime of that product. 50 lenses or 100 lenses to test doesn't give you a 99% confidence interval, but it gives you a heck of a lot better confidence interval than having 2 lenses or 1 lens. And we can see the, like, if you could look at the numbers that Lens Rentals put up, because they've showed the spread in the lenses that they have, and or they've tested, but you can look at their numbers and see that there is an appreciable spread. And then you can actually look at other people who have tried to pick up lenses. And for example, Steve Matthias Mathis, I'm butchering his name, I'm sure. A YouTuber wildlife photographer recently tried to pick up a Tamron 100 to 400, and long story short, he went through an absolute, like, I would never have had the patience to buy and test and return and buy again and test and return as many lenses as he went through to get a good copy. And that's all sample to sample variation of various manufacturers, quality control standards, or whatever. And so I don't, like I said, I don't do resolution testing. Like I said, I don't want to put the money into it. Quite honestly, I would much rather put the money into buying another lens or going somewhere and doing photography, or, something to that effect, than put the money into, software to test lens resolution so that I could test one lens, because that's all I'm going to really buy, to put a number up, and that number doesn't really tell you what you should expect a lens that you buy to have, or to how you should expect it to perform. Um, so not doing lens resolution testing, to me, in some respects, kind of just nukes the whole, I won't say point of a review, but, like, I think that's the part of a review that the vast majority of people are interested in. And so that brings me back to the question of, what am I contributing if I'm, in this review? What am I contributing? Which is kind of got me going into the second part of the problem, which is, so what else can you talk about with a lens, and then how much does it really matter? So, uh, for example, I tend to talk about, like, I've seen other reviewers and they talk about how things perform for certain kinds of photography. Um, I just saw a review recently of Canon's 100 to 500, and the photographer was talking about, bird photography and how it performed for him here and performed for him there. And, there's something to be had there, I guess. But, like, for me, short of failure to focus or something like that, I just don't see talking about performance in an area of photography where how really all valid or how valid that is. I mean, you could talk about, well, okay, bokeh is like this and da 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 da. Uh, and ultimately, that brings me back to the problem that I really have, which is what do you do when you don't have choice? So, a big part of shopping through reviews to me is when you have a choice in the matter in the market. So, a friend of mine just got a new monitor, and he was looking at various Adobe RGB displays, and he could go and look at reviews and he could see, well, like the Dell monitor did this or performed this way or had a problem with that, and the BenQ monitor did this, and the Asus monitor did this, and the EZO and NEC were way out of his budget. There's a choice though. Like, when you're talking about, like I said, a monitor, there's many manufacturers that make comparable feature point monitors. So you have, many manufacturers making Adobe RGB monitors that you can sort of point to or look at or compare. Only Canon, right, as the things stand, at least right now, only Canon is making RF lenses for their RF cameras. Sigma hasn't geared up and started doing RF lenses yet. Tamron, as far as I know, like there's no, at least for sort of like full featured autofocus capable lenses. Your choices right now, if you're moving to Canon's RF platform from, say, their DSLR platform, is either adapt a DSLR lens, which is a perfectly fine option, and it's basically what I do for everything except for the one RF lens that I actually own, or buy a Canon RF lens. Okay, so if I want a native 100 to 400, or a native 24 to 70, for example, f2.8, I have the choice of the RF 24 to 70 f2.8 or an adapted EF 24 to 70 f2.8. I can't go look at Sigmas. There's basically no point in talking about incompatible lenses as far as I'm concerned. So lots of reviewers will do comparative things and say, well, but the Sony is this, or the Panasonic does this, or the Nikon is this. And, well, except I don't know about anybody else out there, but I'm certainly not interested in, oh, well, I'll buy a Sony camera to put a 24 to 70 f2.8 on, and I'll buy a Nikon camera to put a 70 to 200 f2.8 on, and I'll buy a Canon camera to put a 100 to 500 on, and I'll buy a Panasonic camera to put a 16 to 35 on. Like, I'm not going to change platforms because somebody's lens is 5% better, or 2% better. It's almost never going to be 5% better. I'm not going to change platform because one specific lens on a different platform is slightly better. And I don't think that's something that anybody else is going to do. So comparing lenses across brands in a review is not, like, I don't, other than contextualizing something like weight or zoom range, I don't really see there being any value in that. So that's kind of out. And then, when it comes to back to when there is no other choice, when your choice is, if you want a native RF mount 24 to 70 f2.8, you have to buy the Canon. And you're, you know, what do you say in a review, or what do you do in a review that, like, makes any difference there? That, I could say things like, well, this, it's fat. This is an actual point. Compared to the EF 24 to 70, the RF 24 to 70 is fatter. It's like, I think in the worst case, it's 10 millimeters in the, or a control, the focus control dial is like 10 millimeters bigger in diameter on the RF zoom than the EF zoom. Okay, so it's fatter. So what? Um, both lenses still fit within the same basic package area, or same basic area. They're both 88 millimeters in diameter at the widest point. It just happens to be that the widest point on the EF lens is a flange on the hood mount, and the widest point on the RF lens is the outer lens body, where the focus ring and the control ring are. Okay, it's fatter. Does that change it in any meaningful way? Does that change something in any meaningful way? Does it being fatter make it so that it's harder to zoom or harder to hold or harder? Well, no, not really. It's not, it's fatter than its EF predecessor, but there's plenty of other EF and RF lenses that are fatter still. Does it make it harder to pack? Well, no, it's the same overall, it fits in the same overall volume essentially as the EF lens. So if your bag wasn't big enough in diameter to hold the EF lens, it's not big enough to hold the RF lens. So where's the value in talking about this in a review? And that's something I'm struggling with. Like, I don't really see it. The reality, for better or worse, and I would argue it's way much in the case of better, is that if you're buying glass from Canon or Nikon or Sony or Panasonic, we've gotten to a point, to an era, due to computer-aided design, simulation, etc., where they're not really screwing things up. It's hard, so long as we're talking about a conventionally designed lens. Like, we could argue about Canon's lower end RF lenses where they use distortion correction to remove mechanical vignetting of an image that's actually wider angle but mechanically vignetted, and the validity of that as a photographic thing. It's not something I'm personally comfortable with, but that may change over time as well too. But for a conventionally designed lens, these companies are not really screwing them up. The designs are solid. The manufacturing processes are good. Especially like OEM from Canon. Canon has spent a tremendous amount of time, from what I've read and heard and seen and gathered from various sources, improving quality control throughout and process management throughout their lens manufacturing process, to the point that they track optical profiles, the optical testing almost of the lens as it's, and components as they're being assembled, just to ensure the best possible quality that they can produce. I would assume, Sony and Nikon are going to do something similar. They may not do it the same way, but I would assume they would do something similar because, well, quite honestly, if you look at the Sony G Master, the Canon RFL, and the Nikon, what is it, Z Mount S, I think is what they're calling their premium lenses. We're talking about lenses that typically run $2,000 or more, and you're not seeing, at least I'm not seeing, admittedly, I'm not looking too hard, but I'm not seeing a whole slew of people complaining that their lenses came from the factory bad. So it's down to, in some ways, what do you do as a review, for a review? What do you talk about? And that's not to say that I'm not going to publish my review. I'm still kind of polishing it off, trying to tighten it up, get it to be a little bit less long and whatever. Um, but like I said, I kind of sit down and I ask myself, is this important to understand or is this important to talk about? And I'm not convinced that it is. So I'm going to throw this out for the oh, comments. I would love to hear what it is that people are interested in when it comes to looking at lens and camera reviews. Now, as I said, I'm not going down the road of resolution. I tend to focus on user interface, usability, and feature sets. Um, some of the stuff that I will test is, performance of the lens. Like, I don't completely eschew that, but, uh, resolution. And again, I'm not saying it's not important to know what it is, and I'm not saying that resolution isn't important, but uh, it's just not something I can effectively test, and it's not something that really I really see as being a valuable investment in time and money to get set up to test. Uh, but like I said, I'd love to hear what other kind of things, or what things people are most interested in lens reviews and what they find most valuable. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this episode up. It's going to be a super short one. It's only 22 minutes long instead of the usual hour plus. Um, as always, if you like this, found this interesting, informative, please smash that like button. Consider subscribing if you want to hear more about semi-technical stuff about photography and videography. Please leave a comment if on what you look for in lens reviews or what you're most interested in lens reviews. And as I said, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.